Sean Furfaro here with Kitchener Rangers General Manager Mike McKenzie. Time for our annual chat. Mike, the post-deadline analysis. Thanks again for taking this time with me.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so the trade deadline has come and gone. How are you feeling the first week after?
It's nice to relax after. It's one of those things where it's a big lead up. Right from the start of the year, really. I mean, a lot of time and effort goes into it. A lot of focus gets put on the actual week itself or the days leading up to the deadline, but obviously there's a lot of work that goes into scouting our league and understanding what's available and what types of players are out there, and so we watch a lot of our league throughout the year, especially at the start, get an idea of different types of players, and so there is a lot of work that's done prior to the actual deadline itself. And the week of the deadline, obviously, things intensify quite a fair bit. There's a lot of phone calls, and it is a really busy time. So it's always nice after the fact to kind of take a day or two to unwind. It feels like there's a bit of a weight lifted. Now the focus really turns to other stuff, like the OHL draft is the big one. Kind of that next event that I and our management group can look towards and put all of our time and dedication to now that we're not, balancing and managing the trade deadline anymore.
The easy way to put it is into three, tidy little boxes. You buy, you sell, or you stand pat. And when I think about what you did this season, I thought you did a little bit of all three. I thought the selling aspect came with the offseason trade of Carson Rakoff. You did some modest buying, maybe some sneaky quiet buying in there with Andrew Vermeulen and Chris Grisolia, Jakob Chromiak coming into this team. And then at the end, really a stand pat in that final week. What was your mindset on how to approach the different stages of the season in that sense?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And that was something I mentioned on the radio the other day, is a lot of times people do want to label you in one bucket or the other as, this team's going to be a buyer, this team's going to be a seller. And I think it's pretty accurate what you mentioned about doing a little bit of everything. Starting in the summer with the Rakoff trade, obviously that's in the sell bucket. And that was kind of the first step to giving us flexibility going into the season before we had any wins or losses and knew how the season was going to go. But it gave us the flexibility now not to have to worry as much about our draft pick cupboard and replenishing that. And the most important ones are obviously this year's picks with 2025 picks, because those are going to turn into players as soon as April when we pick those players. So that was really important, gave us flexibility. And then, like you said, some of those minor deals at the start of the year, some were a little bit out of necessity just with some of the injuries we had, long-term injuries to guys like Anstis and Hedrick. And others just made sense with the types of player that were available that could help our team in a certain position. So the Grisolia, Vermeulen, Chromiak, I may be forgetting one in there somewhere, but those were the three that kind of stuck out that were right towards the start of the season. And they weren't big ads per se in terms of, the amount of assets that exchanged hands or a frontline trade. And they weren't exactly household names, but those guys have been really, really important to our team this year. And I don't think we're where we are without those three guys combined. Jakob's done a really good job to really shore up our defense and given us an older defenseman back there on what was kind of a younger group at the start of the year. And then Grizz and Verm have really provided a kind of older presence on the middle, the bottom six at points throughout the season and chipped in offensively, but they play a really hard defensive, physical, strong game. And they're older players too, so they're reliable and responsible. So, those were smaller adds. And then obviously at the deadline, or closer to the deadline, with Humphreys and Pridham. Well, Pridham's the one I forgot. He wasn't a trade, but again, that's a really big ad for free because of a rule change, and Ju would go into that category as well. Ellis would go into that category as well, because of the NCAA landscape changing. And then Humphreys at the end, same with him. So
I definitely want to talk a bit about that NCAA rule change and how it affected the makeup of the team this year. But going back to the last week before the deadline, that's a very active week across the entire league, and it was this season as well. Did you entertain any offers? Were there any crazy offers out there where was the phone ringing looking for some of the older guys or the key parts of this Ranger team?
Yeah, definitely. We have some very good older players. So our 308s are really good overages in our league. And if you throw Ando in there as well, those are 4 really good older players that I think any team would love to have. And they've been a huge part of our success. That's why we have a lot of wins this year, is those guys are huge parts of our team. So there's definitely people calling, interested in those players. They would all help a team. We didn't get too far down the road, to be honest, with any of those talks. They're guys that we really value. They've been Rangers for a long time. And with where our team's at, at this point, it didn't make sense to make one of those moves. But you always have to listen. That's your job as a manager, is you pick up the phone and you see what someone has to say, just to see what's out there. That's my mentality, at least, is that you never know until you talk to someone. So we weren't turning teams away, but we weren't actively looking to do anything as well.
Yeah, and I love that your 3 overagers that you mentioned, the only jersey they're ever putting on is a Kitchener Ranger jersey. You've got career Rangers, and I think that speaks a lot to what you just said, how much they bring to this team.
100%. Those are guys that have been here since day one, and they've had some success winning some rounds of playoffs and playing in big games and big moments. And so that's really valuable for us as we get into the second half of the season and into playoffs. And they also are good culture guys for our dressing room, and they know what it means to be a Ranger. They know how to act. They know how to do things the right way. And from the outside looking in, sometimes you don't always see that, but when you're in the dressing room every day and you're around the guys, you need guys like that and older guys that can lead the young guys and show them what the right way to do things is.
Yeah, I always get a good laugh at the anonymous internet GMs that seem to speculate and know everything that's about to happen. And everything was happening this year, Mike. We had, you were trading everyone away, you were bringing everyone in, and everything in between. I heard Luca Pinelli was coming here, I heard Owen Allard was coming here, Parsons was definitely going. I had a laugh at all of these things. Does anything get into your mind when you hear all this online speculation?
No, definitely not mine. I know it's that's the age we live in now. For positively or negatively, you could make an argument on both sides maybe. The interaction for the league and the buzz is great, and social media can do that. That's a great part of social media, is that it gets people excited, it creates narratives, it creates buzz.
Sure, when there's facts behind it.
For the league. When there's facts behind it. But there also is the element of there is a lot of false information and rumors out there. And it does impact people at the end of the day. It's a little different when you're talking about adults. Some of these guys are 16, 17, 18 years old. So it's a little, it's one of those things that's tough to really manage, but I don't read a lot into it personally. I try to stay away from that stuff, but you hear stuff from other people, people calling you saying, I heard this or I heard that. And I will say there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of things that just aren't true. And, you wish it weren't that way, because you don't want to have to keep answering, for sure, rejecting things and saying, no, that's not true. But unfortunately, a lot of it is made up. And a lot of the reports or things that people were telling me were being said were wildly inaccurate and not even close to being true. So that it's not my problem, but it's just one of those things where you wish there's maybe a little bit more accountability on what people were saying, but that's the age we live in now, so we have to deal with it.
Essentially, there's a PSA. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. From Sean and Mike. The more you know, the star flies across. You mentioned, Mike, the NCAA rule change. So, I mean, in a perfect world, you can describe it really lowest common denominator. A few great players kind of fell into your lap. That's great. How is this NCAA rule change going to affect this league going forward? Is this a tidal wave of activity off the top and then it's going to level off, or do we still not know what's going to happen going forward?
I don't think anyone really knows how it will go. It came fast and furious, that's for sure. we had inklings or had heard rumblings that this was going to happen at some point and be ready for this to come. We thought maybe it was more of a this off-season thing. And then bam, a couple weeks later, they're voting and it's happening, and things got flipped upside down for everyone, from our league to the NCAA to the USHL to Junior B, Junior A leagues to U Sport. It really was a sport-altering decision that really touched all leagues, and every league and every player at that point really had to think, okay, how does this impact me? And some players were really impacted positively by it and given options, and others maybe not so much, even at other levels that are outside the OHL. So it was really an interesting time, and I said to a lot of people when it happened, I said, this is a watershed moment in hockey, because in my 12 years in the league, nothing this significant or nothing this big has happened. There's been rule changes, there's been things that get happen, but really there's never been something this large that has happened, especially mid-season, that has affected so many leagues and so many players all in one shot. So it was a really interesting time, and we were the beneficiary of it to a certain extent, getting to bring in guys like Pridham and Ellis, and now signing Zhu and Humphreys. So we're happy about that, but I think no one really knows how it's going to work. I think it's going to take a year, 2, 3 years, maybe even, for everything to kind of level off. And then, the new norm will happen at that point, once, everyone gets their bearings again.
I remember talking to you the morning after the rule broke. We were talking at practice, and at that time it was like, we don't know anything. We have no idea what's going on. And still, at this point, it's still relatively unknown. It's great that you've got these gifts. I will ask you, is there anticipation of any further gifts coming this year in terms of this NCAA rule change? Do you anticipate anyone else joining in the same manner?
No, definitely not. Outside of guys that are like playing pro hockey, there's certain rules that don't allow players to report after certain dates. So no, this is our roster now, and these are the guys that we've got, and we're going to go with.
All right, this is our roster. This is who the Rangers are going with. And how happy are you with the makeup of this team as you head into the final stage of this season and hopefully a lengthy playoff run?
Yeah, we're happy with it. I think it's one of those things where we're in a good place right now, standings-wise, in this current moment. And we're hoping to finish the year strong and stay in that top group of teams league-wide and in the Western Conference. And worry about this year and playoffs and that type of thing. But for me, it's exciting too. We have a lot of really good young players that, hopefully we can really stay competitive and try to, get a 3, 4, or 5 year window here where we were a pretty good team last year. We're a pretty good team this year. And if we can keep pushing and pushing, we can have good teams for the next 2, 3 years. With some of the young talent that we have coming up and replacing some of the guys that we'll lose. And that's always been the goal here, is to create a sustainable winning hockey club and not having down years and really just rolling year into year over and over and being consistently one of the top teams. And we're getting there, and it's starting to get there. Obviously, we're not there yet, but positive signs that we're doing well this year, and we also have some young players that are going to be with us for the next 2, 3, 4 years that are also going to be really good players. So we're excited about the present, and we're also excited about the future.
You have talked to me about this sustainability model for a number of years now, and I think that really was evident in spades this season. I think you achieved it really well in terms of the makeup of the roster that you have right now. I know there's a lot of talk about this draft cupboard. We always talk about it. You referenced it. I made the argument on one of our broadcasts that I think a deep playoff run for this team, especially with the youth that you have, I think the experience that could give your players might actually be more valuable sometimes than an unknown draft pick down the road. What's your thought on playoff experience versus a draft pick and where that value would land?
Definitely playoff experience is important. The more you can get, the more guys understand, especially for your young players that are going to be there for a couple of years. Winning's a habit, losing's a habit. You see it all the time, teams that want to try to rebuild in pro hockey or even in our league. And, it's not as easy as some think, just to blow things up and go that way. And, teams that are successful, they have a leg up the next year because those guys have played in big games and they understand what it takes to win and be in tight games and the value of winning and the culture of winning and what it takes. So that being said, you do want to make sure that you're leaving yourself healthy in terms of bringing in the next wave of Rangers and picking players with those draft picks. For me, that's the most important thing, is picking the players with the draft picks. We'll always have currency to trade draft picks because people sometimes forget that every June 1st, or July 1st, sorry, new picks become available to us. And that's because our league protected us from ourselves from trading picks too far out. So in the past, you could get rid of 7, 8, 9 years.
It's a natural regeneration
so
that will always happen.
It's a natural regeneration. And so, that's going to happen naturally. For me, the most important thing is to continue to have picks to pick players and pick good players. You have to have the picks. That's step one. Step two is you have to pick the right players. So step one is having them when we have them for this year, which is good. And at some point, if we need to use picks to trade, we will have enough. But we really want to get to a spot where we don't have to trade 20 draft picks in 2 years down the road because we need 6 players on our roster. If we're doing that, maybe our team isn't that good. We have a decent or good team, but not a great team. I think the goal for us is to get to a spot where our team is very, very good without having to trade for big pieces. And then if you need to trade to fulfill a need, or you've got a little hole, you can trade for a player or 2 or 3 at the deadline to really bolster your team and put it over the top. But I think for us, the goal is to get to the place where we're not having to unload 15 or 20 draft picks every year to bring in loads of players. We want to try to develop our guys internally. Step 1 is having the picks. Step 2 is picking the right player. And then step 3 is developing them and getting them to a place where they're really good players in our league.
Yeah, trading away 15 or 19 draft picks in 1 year would be crazy. I said it, not him. Mike, listen, as always, thank you for taking time. I really appreciate you being able to break down. Every year we sit down and talk about this. And good news, 52 weeks before we have to do this again.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.